Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Real Estate IQ, the show that brings deep insight into the South Florida real estate market. Today we have a very special show that many of you have asked for about business brokerage, the buying and selling of businesses. And I have a great guest with me today, Jerry Stapel, business broker with Avanti Way. Thank you, Jerry, for being here with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
So Jerry, our audience really loves this topic. There's a lot of investors who are looking to buy, and there's a lot of viewers who are looking to sell their businesses. Tell me a little bit about what is business brokerage and what is the role of the business broker?
Okay, well, in a nutshell, basically what we do is we mediate and serve to facilitate the transaction between somebody who wants to sell the business with somebody who wants to buy a business. We help with all the documentation to try to prepare all the information that we need to gather from the business that is going to be sold, right, to present it to a buyer that wants to see as much information as possible about the business he wants to buy.
Do buyers and sellers rely on business brokers for the due diligence, the accounting, and all those things?
No, we facilitate, and sometimes we refer to accountants or attorneys. We do not conduct the due diligence ourselves. We typically refer that or advise the clients to seek somebody else.
What are some of the kinds of businesses that you're seeing opportunities for here in South Florida in today's market?
That's an interesting question. There's a lot of opportunities nowadays, mostly on the services arena. We see a lot of ice creams, a lot of restaurants, we see gas stations, we see hair salons, nail salons, wax salons, massage parlor salons. There's all kinds, but there's also mechanic shops, body shops, air conditioning, servicing businesses. We have contractors that are selling their business, their book of business for, say, construction, cabinets, kitchens, all sorts of businesses.
Now, many of our investors also want to invest because they're trying to find an investor visa like an EB-5. Are those opportunities present here today?
The vast majority of the business that we transact are qualified for an E2 visa or for an investor's visa, yes.
Oh, fantastic. Now, let's move on to the subject of financing, right? How does financing work for local businesses? Is it seller financing? Is there bank financing?
That's a good question. Businesses that are sold under $250,000 typically are sold cash. They expect the buyer to bring all the money, at closing. However, sometimes, and what I mean sometimes is maybe less than 10%, the seller is willing to finance a little piece, maybe 20 or 30% of the purchase price.
Okay.
For businesses that are over $500,000, typically sometimes the seller wants to finance, but if they have good books and records or good tax returns, we could go and seek financing with a bank or an SBA loan.
Right. So you talked about records and financing. This is really important, one of the pieces of due diligence. What happens, for example, with leases? What happens if the current business has a lease? How does that assumption of lease work, for example?
Well, it's a critical part of the contract. As a matter of fact, our contract has a standard clause that says that the entire agreement is contingent upon the landlord approving the new tenant, approving a new lease, or the assignment of the current lease. So it's a critical part of the contract.
Now, what are some of the steps that one must take if they want to sell the business? They want to list the business and hire a business broker to sell it. What are some of the main points that they need to understand?
They need to get all their documentation in order. What we need is basically as much financial information from the business as possible. The last 3-year financial records, profit and loss, bank statements, tax returns, a copy of the current lease agreement, as much information, for instance, the business assets, a detailed list of all the assets that will be conveyed on the transaction, but as much financial information from the business and historically description of what they do, typically who their clients are, who their vendors are, as much information that we can eventually rely to a buyer.
Well, I think that it goes without saying, but it's important to understand that to give the best probability of success for the sale, the more organized and the more formal the business has their accounting records and their books, the better and faster that the opportunity to sell will be.
Absolutely. Perhaps one of the most critical questions that people ask us is, why is this person selling their business?
Right.
So it's important that we get there straight, the story correctly, and it's one of the most sought after questions. But if we provide all the information, if the business is established, if the business has a solid track record, and we can document and prove all that, the buyer is mostly very interested. So basically that's how we approach it. A lot of documentation, and the reason for sale, have it very straightforward. Sometimes it's the seller wants to move, sometimes they want to retire, sometimes they're sick, sometimes their relative is sick, sometimes they're moving out of town. There's many different reasons why somebody wants to sell their business.
So what about for the buyer? What are some of the key considerations that buyers need to understand about buying a business? For example, why buy a business instead of starting one on your own? What are some of those issues?
Well, I think that the statistics on starting a brand new business are very brutal. About 10% of the business that are started are successful on the first 5 years. So it's a very risky proposition. Whereas if you buy an established business that has a track record for 5 or 10 years, your chances of success are significantly higher.
Right. So is there a place that a business broker goes to see all the potential opportunities?
Yes, we have an MLS, a Business Brokers MLS. Florida has the largest business brokerage association in the country. As such, we congregate, or we aggregate all that information in a multiple listing service, which is called the BBF MLS, where we list the businesses for sale. And there's all these places where we also advertise, but those are the main ones.
Well, what's great for our investors who are watching us to know is that if you want to choose, for example, a certain location or a certain industry or a certain profile of business, a business broker can have access to multiple opportunities and try and turn around that offer.
We can filter the search on where the person wants to buy the business, the industry in which he wants to invest, the kind of net income that he wants, how much benefits do they want for themselves, how much money do they want to invest, if they want a space with a certain particular rent, or they don't want to pay more than because some people get scared with a high rent, or they want a business that at least sells X amount of $1 million a year. We can filter all those for our searches.
This is fascinating information, and we encourage all of you to send us your questions. If you are interested in this subject, please contact us and we'll make sure to get it to Jerry. Jerry, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you for having me.